Are you a parent who wants to give your child a financial head start? Well, you are in the right place. Welcome to Beyond Piggy Banks. I'm Jorge, and in each episode we explore simple, practical ways to shape your child's financial future. And the best part, you don't need a financial degree, and you don't need a lot of money to begin. The earlier you act, the bigger their advantage becomes. Let's build their future. In the last episode, we opened the basket, the ETF, the pre-arranged fund that carries your ingredients home. We understood what an ETF is, how it works, who manufactures them, and what to look for before choosing one. And we introduced something at the very end, almost as a warning, that deserves a full conversation of its own. Currency. Every investment you make exists in a currency. And when your currency and the basket's base currency are different, the exchange rate becomes part of your return, silently, automatically, whether you notice it or not. Today we talk about what that means, why it matters, and what you can do about it. Let me start with a number that might surprise you. Imagine your basket grew 8% last year. The companies inside it performed well. The index it tracks moved up, by any measure, a good year. But the currency those assets are priced in fell 10% against your currency. Your actual return, negative 2%. The market went up, your basket went up, and you still lost money in your currency terms. This is currency risk, and it's one of the most underestimated forces in long-term investing. Not because it's complicated, it's because it's invisible. You open your account, you see the numbers moving, but behind every number is a currency, and currencies move too. Here is where most people get confused. When you buy an ETF, there are two currencies in play, and they are not always the same. The first is the transaction currency. It's the currency of the market where you buy and sell the basket. If you buy on the Swiss exchange, you are transacting in Swiss francs. If you buy on the Amsterdam exchange, you are transacting in euros. Your broker may give you access to multiple markets. A Swiss broker can buy on the New York Stock Exchange in dollars or on the Swiss exchange in francs. What determines the transaction currency is the market, not the broker. The second is the base currency, which is the currency in which the fund itself is valued. Even if a fund holds companies for 40 different companies, it has only one base currency. Everything inside is converted into that single currency for valuation. For most globally diversified funds, that is the US dollar. To make this concrete, imagine a basket that holds only European companies. German, French, Spanish, Italian, all valued in euros. The base currency is euros. That same basket is also listed on the New York Stock Exchange, where it trades in dollars. An American investor buys it in dollars. An European investor buys the same basket in euros on the Amsterdam Exchange. Same basket, same companies, same base currency, but two different transaction currencies. For the American investor, the return they see in dollars depends not only on how European companies performed, but on how the euro moved against the dollar over that period. If the euro fell, their dollar return is lower than the underlying performance suggests. If the euro rose, they get a bonus. The companies did not change, the basket did not change, only the currency of the transaction changed, and that changes everything. Let me make this even more tangible. Imagine a Swiss company that makes chocolate, sold all over the world. In Switzerland, the chocolate is priced in Swiss francs, simple, stable, clear. But that same chocolate is also exported to the United States, where the American importer pays in dollars. The chocolate is identical, the recipe has not changed, the quality has not changed. And the Swiss franc price the manufacturer charge has not changed either. But every time the American importer places a new order, the dollar amount they pay is different because the exchange rate between the Swiss franc and the dollar has moved since the last order. When the new stock arrives on the shelves, the price in dollars reflects that new rate, not the old one. Now, before this feels like a problem with no upside, I want to be clear. Currency risk cuts both ways. If the dollar falls against your currency, your dollar-based basket gains extra value in your currency terms, even if the underlying assets did not move. You receive a bonus return that has nothing to do with the market and everything to do with the exchange rate moving in your favor. This is not a reason to avoid global diversification. It is a reason to understand what you own and to make deliberate choices about your currency exposure rather than discovering it by accident. How do we solve this situation? The simplest way to reduce currency risk is to choose baskets that are denominated in your local currency, or baskets whose underlying assets are primarily in your local market. If you live in Switzerland and invest in Swiss companies through a Swiss franc denominated fund, the currency question largely disappears. The transaction currency and the base currency are the same. And more importantly, you earn in francs, you spend in francs, and your investments are valued in francs. If the franc rises or falls against the dollar, it does not affect you. You never need to convert. What you see is what you can actually use. But here is the reality. A well-diversified, globally oriented portfolio, the kind that we are building, holds assets from around the world. US companies, European companies, Asian companies. There is no single currency global basket because the world does not run on a single currency. How much you can limit currency exposure through local market choices depends on where you live and how developed your local market is. For investors in large, diverse markets, the Eurozone, the United States, there is reasonable choice. For investors in smaller markets such as Switzerland or many emerging economies, the options are more limited. Your market, your local exchange, and the range of products available to you will shape what is possible. For those who want to reduce currency risk more directly, there is a second solution: an hedged ETF. An hedged basket holds exactly the same ingredients as its unhedged equivalent. The same companies, the same index, the same diversification, but it adds a layer of financial protection, a currency hedge. If the dollar falls against the euro, the hedge compensates. If the dollar rises, the hedge absorbs the gain. The goal is that what you see in your currency terms reflects the actual performance of the underlying assets, not the noise of the exchange rate movements on top of it. You will often see these baskets labeled with the letter H or the words hedged in their name. A basket tracking the S&P 500 in euros, hedged, gives you exposure to the American companies while removing most of the dollar-euro currency movement from your return. It sounds like the perfect solution, but there is a trade-off. Designed to neutralize the impact of exchange rate movements between the base currency and your local currency. In simple terms, the manufacturer of the basket enters into financial agreements that offset currency movements. If the dollar falls against the euro, the hedge compensates. If the dollar rises, the hedge absorbs the gain. The goal is that what you see in your currency terms reflect the actual performance of the underlying assets, not the noise of the exchange rate movements on top of it. You will often see these baskets labeled with the letter H or the word hedged in their name. A basket tracking the S&P 500 in euros, hedged, gives you exposure to the American companies while removing most of the dollar-euro currency movement from your return. It sounds like the perfect solution, but there is a trade-off. Hedging as a cost. And this cost varies. They are linked to the difference in interest rates between the two currencies. When rates are similar, costs are modest. When they diverge significantly, as they have in recent years, the cost of hedging can rise substantially. Always check the actual hedging cost of any specific fund before choosing. Over 10 or 20 years, that additional cost compounds. It is smaller than the cost difference between passive and active investing, but it is real and it never stops. So, is hedging always worth it? The honest answer is it depends. For a long-term, globally diversified portfolio where your exposure is spread across many currencies, the natural mix of movement provides some buffer, and the cost of hedging may outweigh the benefits over time. But for an investor with heavy exposure to a single foreign currency, particularly one that is volatile relative to their own, an hedge basket may offer meaningful protection that justifies the cost. What matters most is that you know the choice exists and that you make it deliberately, not by accident. One final thought worth holding. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency. More assets are priced in dollars than any other currency. More global trade is settled in dollars. For non-US investors, and that is the most of the world, dollar exposure is almost unavoidable in a globally diversified portfolio. When you own the world's largest companies, you own a lot of dollar price assets. This is not a reason to avoid global diversification, quite the opposite. It is a reason to understand what you own, know your currency exposures, and make deliberate choices about whether and how much to hedge. The dollar's dominance is not permanent. Currencies shift over decades. But for now, it is part of the landscape every global investor navigates. Currency is definitely not the most exciting topic in investing, but it is one of the most important and one of the most overlooked. Two investors owning the same basket over the same period can end up with meaningfully different results simply because of where they live and what currency they transact in. You now understand the problem. You understand that it cuts both ways. You understand the two tools available to manage it: local currency alignment and hedging, and the trade-offs each one carries. And you also understand that for long-term, globally diversified portfolio, currency risk is part of the picture. Not a reason to retreat from global investing. The ingredients are known, the basket is understood. The currency question has been addressed. In the next episode, we cook. Episode 10 brings everything together. The allies, the ingredients, the toolkit, assembled into an actual portfolio. A real, simple, diversified, low-cost, automated portfolio built for a 10 or 20-year horizon. We will walk through every choice and explain exactly why it is made, so you can apply the same thinking wherever you live or whatever platform you use. The recipe is ready. I am Jorge, and I'm here because your child deserves the advantage we never had. We are done hoping for the best, we are building it. Subscribe to Beyond Piggy Banks on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. The clock is ticking. Let's get to work.